Welcome to the You Go First podcast. This is the place where we bring together thought leaders, business pioneers, personal development gurus, and just about any person we discover that will inspire and compel you to go first in all areas of your life. Please welcome keynote speaker, philanthropist, and the official head dream chaser for Odyssey Teams, Inc., our host, Lane Hensley.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to an installment of You Go First. I'm really excited today. The topic is really around social media and the pitfalls that young people get into. And a parent who happens to be a good friend of my wife, she went to high school with my wife, Jean, is with us. So first thing we want to do is welcome Jodi. Welcome to You Go First.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. This is your opportunity to go first on behalf of every mom out there, every parent out there. And hopefully we get a lot of young people listening to this podcast because although the theme of the podcast is you go first, meaning go first to take risk in your life, to ask tough questions, to be bold and forgive people or give people trust, or at the same time, just where in your life are you held back in and not going first? And you're certainly answering the call as a parent. And by, in all honesty, once you start telling your story, people will understand why it's not the place where you really want to go first.
No.
But you have gone first. I believe your son was 13 years old and now he's 20.
He'll be 21 in October.
21. So this is a long time ago. And we're talking about social media, the trap door that he fell through and how that's impacted his life and your life. Mm-hmm. And now you're becoming quite a spokesperson and getting out there and speaking to groups about social media and the story that you have tragically, honestly gone through and how that story is continuing to today. So maybe just introduce yourself to our audience and what happened to your son and really the where you're going first to try to really tell people about how dangerous these cell phones are and social media and all that good stuff. So take it away.
No, thanks, Lane. I appreciate that. My name's Jodi Palmer and I'm a mom of two. I have obviously my son that's now going to be 21 and I have a daughter that's going to be 11. So we went through some major ordeals by giving the phone. It was a present at first, and this was before we knew about a whole lot of social media and those kind of things. So he got a cell phone and like every other kid started using them, started figuring out the apps. And
sure.
And when he was 13, I had been checking it because things were starting to be like, you need to check what's on your phone. They have the world in their hands. I started checking it and found a couple of things, texts from girls that were not quite appropriate, and called him on it and took the phone away for a couple of weeks, and Dad gave it back. So about 2 weeks after that, he decided to, he was 13 as a freshman in high school. This was between his freshman and sophomore year. And everybody else was 14 and 15 years old. So a good year ahead of him, so to speak, in the sense of growing and maturing. He decided to go to a girl's house, took a buddy with him, and they went over. Her parents were gone, and proceeded to do what kids do and experiment. And he got to, I guess, what's considered second base, and decided to take an 8-second video to prove his manhood. Wow. To his buddies.
I'm sure our listeners are like, their imaginations are going crazy with what happened next. And this is, of course, a story that, all of us as parents, we give our kids phones mm-hmm. and then we trust them to make good decisions with it. So, here, obviously, he's making a bad choice and tell us more.
Correct. And I know he knew right from wrong, but the peer pressure to also fit in with his buddies and not be made fun of for, not experimenting or going anywhere yet with a girl, I think got the best of him. And so he made that wrong call. And that 8 seconds turned into 8 years at this point. So wow. We've been through a lot. Went back. He took the video, put it in an app, which I was unfamiliar with. It was a hidden app, basically a calculator app. You put a 4-digit code in and it was kind of like a photo vault or a video vault.
So we know now we have, obviously 8 years ago, we didn't have Instagram, Snapchat. Now there's TikToks and all this other stuff going on. Correct. So there's an app then where he's got this this photo or this video, and they put it in a secret app. So as you're checking phones, you might not find this. And I know kids today, a lot of parents out there might not know about a Finsta. So kids have Instagram, and then they have their Finsta account, which is their fake Insta, which is the one that they only show the juicy stuff to their closest friends, they think. But of course, all those private apps and stuff, that information is out there. Those videos are out there. So here your son's got this, and he has it in the secret vault. What happens next?
He has it in a secret vault. He goes back to school his sophomore year. His buddy that was with him that night was on the football team and started saying, oh, so, he was with a girl, and, boys being talking. And so he talks, and it starts spreading, the rumor starts spreading about it, obviously, and not necessarily total rumor, but the word gets around. The girl finds out, he starts to panic, and then he's confronted by a junior who is known to pretty much share nudes of people. He gets them from others and then shares them with whoever asks for them. Some kids apparently were buying them from him as well. So
we know now, we'll flash forward. Just people listening, this is now cultivation for this person, whoever this guy is, this other person.
Correct.
Distribution of pornography, collection of pornography, like there's a list of charges.
Correct.
So for all those parents out there listening right now, you got to go first to understand this technology and recognize that if a kid is asking for, hey, can you share that picture of this whatever with me? You're now, what would that be called? Cultivation of, or?
So legally now, it's even if you send it. So what they ended up doing was finding a bunch of pictures of girls on phones, showing from nudes, right? That they were sending for attention seeking. A lot of it was that they weren't necessarily asked for it, but and just those girls sending it, that is distribution in itself.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too far off the story. So here are these people, and there's this person on their campus, which is probably one on every campus in America, or in every little social network group. That's the person that's like, "Ooh, cool! Can I get that picture?" Right. And then they're distributing it. Yes. And so what's happened now to this?
So at that point, the girl gets word that it's starting to get around, and she's obviously.
So somehow this distributor guy, how does he get the video from your son out of his calculator?
Yes, sorry. He corners him after school one day and asks him, and he asked him to show it to us. So he opened it up, and the kid had an iPad, and at the time it's kind of like an airdrop, but it was bumpy. You could bump it, and he bumped the video and got it onto his iPad, and then he started distributing.
Did your son know that he had bumped it, or is this and maybe he didn't realize the consequences, but
he
it was
didn't.
Like, oh, whatever.
He wasn't really sure what had just happened, and when the kid asked him to open it again to make sure he had gotten it, he told him no, and he left, and then he ended up deleting it off his phone because he started to get scared and worried because he knew that what was going around.
So he's 13 at this time. So 13 years old. I have a 13-year-old son, just turned 14.
Yep.
So, he's in the same, like, oh, girls are texting me. And I don't know the extent, but this is serious business and life-changing stuff that's happened to now a 14-year-old boy has this 8-second video. We're at second base, which for most, I'm 52 years old. So, it's like, oh, okay, second base. But now it's distribution of, it's creation of. Correct. And now it's out there. And now this is being distributed by this sort of hub distributor guy.
Yes.
This kid.
Yes.
And so it's getting around. The girl knows about it. It probably all of a sudden, I'm sure at some point, the administration at the school or the police, how does it escalate?
Yeah, so they ended up calling the boys in. She had gone to a counselor at the school, and they ended up calling the boys in, and they started taking phones and kind of looking through them. And it was like Pandora's box, actually. They ended up calling in another kid, because one text or photo led to another, right? And the police, because of the nature of it, were called in. And then an investigation started with that, and the process ended. So at that point, our son was asked to actually leave the school that we and his father and I had attended as well, or they would be expelling him. So we chose to remove him and leave that expulsion off, moved him to public school. Took about a year to have the case come to and a hearing, and at that point he was charged actually with a sexual offense. There were 3 charges. There was a distribution of child pornography as well as creation of child pornography. The third one is they dropped the 2 of those, but they did charge him with an adult law to minor, which I prefer not to say exactly what that charge was because it had to do with what was in the video. But it was an adult at that time, an adult charge to minor because they didn't have minor to minor laws
So he's
with
now,
technology.
So now 14 years old, maybe pushing 15.
No, he was 13 and a half.
But at this point, so it's been a year. He's pulled out of the regular school that you had gone to with your husband, as a high school kid.
Correct.
Now you're in public school. Is he going to that public school, or is he incarcerated at any point along the way?
So he went to the public school, and then when he was at the hearing, he was charged. He served 45 days in juvenile hall.
Wow. So he's a good student, right?
Yes.
He's a good student. He's a star on the baseball team. He's coming up. He's a freshman in high school, and he's got a girlfriend, or he's obviously a likable kid. And now he's incarcerated for 45 days.
45 days. He had honors classes. We actually they'd never dealt with a child in honors classes, so we asked for approval to have him released during the day so he could attend his school and keep up with those honors classes. So when he got out, he was able to continue moving forward. But yes.
Well, in the spirit of you go first, you're going first today for us to tell us this story. I mean, this is every parent's worst nightmare whose son or daughter has a phone and is exchanging pictures, exchanging information, things that they did, things that we did. So many parents out there look back and go, oh, if everything I had done in high school was on video, I'd be in big trouble. So these kids don't understand the impact and the longevity of the information that they're collecting. And, of course, they call them nudes, even though you're not maybe totally nude, and maybe it's like, well, she sent it to me. So she, and as a minor, you cannot consent to any of this, correct?
Correct.
So even if, a kid has somebody who says, well, she sent it to me, it was consensual, they say, no, a minor cannot consent to an adult activity is the premise.
Correct. So with that being said, if a child does hear it or receives it, right, they should really go to an adult, a parent, or someone that they trust and let them know that they've received that, because even if they open it, they can be charged too.
Yeah. So here we are. He's now been incarcerated for 45 days. It's been a year. What's the ultimate sentencing? And then what were the consequences in the immediate kind of his high school years? How much was he taken out of sort of the normal flow over this 8 seconds? And what kind of restrictions were put on him as part of maybe a parole? Was he on parole at some point? Because like I said, every parent that is listening out here, a lot of our listeners are, business professionals. So they're working, 20 hour, 50 hour, they're working these huge weeks, they're traveling. They have to communicate. Their kids have to have phones for daily business to get done. And of course, they're going to have these apps. If they want to have an app, they can keep it a secret in some way. Parents, they're always, outsmarting us in how to.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, your charge is go into schools, talk to the kids, talk to the parents, educate them so that they can self-manage and recognize that they're playing with dynamite. They're playing Russian roulette with their cell phones.
Correct.
With these consequences that the first time I heard your story, my mind is just blown that serious stuff is happening, has happened to you. So, okay, so now here he's gone a year, he's served some time, and the sentence comes down. What happens next?
So he is released, and mind you, a whole nother, as a parent, it's one thing, but to have him behind, these walls, as a parent, it was extremely difficult on us, and we didn't know what next step to take next or anything like that. It was just a whole new process. But I went into mama bear mode in like double time, but he was put on probation with certain rules. He had curfew of 8:00 at night, so he couldn't attend, dances or football games unless he was accompanied by us and had that approved by his probation officer. He, obviously had to start a sexual offense because it was considered a sexual offense. So he had to sit in with a group therapy with actual kids and adults that had done far worse. Yeah. So think about that as he's growing and maturing, 13 to, now he's heard and seen so many stories that I
So
don't even know.
desensitized, I'm
Yes.
sure. To here you're going from honors classes to athletic programs to normal high school experience. Now you're incarcerated and surrounded by drug abusers and physical abusers and criminals. Small arm robbery, all this
Correct.
kind of stuff. And then he's flashing between I'm a regular kid to I have a probation officer. I have to, sorry friends, I got to go home because I have 8:00 curfew. Oh, what, and I can't be on social media.
Correct.
They take away all his phones and all that kind of stuff.
They took his social media away. They had left him with the smartphone, but it was to be monitored. However, they ended up taking that away because his senior year, they found him on Snapchat because he thought he would still get away. He thought he wouldn't get caught again. And he did. And so he served another 45 days for that. They were trying to teach him a hard lesson. And when that happened, it was right at the beginning of baseball season. So he lost his senior baseball season, which he was most likely going to be picked up and be able to go
he's
play.
He's getting recruited by colleges, and instead he's got this scarlet letter really on him.
Correct.
And he's having to drop out because of these things. So
also had a target on his back this whole time because obviously where we lived, it got around very quickly because of social media. I was constantly monitoring social media, turning stuff in because of things that were being said to him, and the hashtags that were being written were horrific, and just trying to protect him in that regard too.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure this has been a nightmare experience. I can imagine there's a emotional cost that this has cost not only him, but you, your family. What was some of the impact on your relationship with your husband financially and emotionally? Like, how did that go down?
Yeah, well, we were divorced. And so, there was already a struggle because it wasn't a healthy divorce for our son either. So, and the men basically not talking is what it was. And a lot was put through him, put on my son. So, when this all happened, we had to come together and hire attorneys. And so there was a huge financial loss. There was also a civil lawsuit that started after the official charge. That lasted a couple of years. And then...
and that's a lawsuit from the parents of the girl?
From the parents of the girl.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's a new level of like, okay, so this young lady that's involved, they have an emotional connection, they have a relationship, an 8-second video, and now they're on opposing sides in a court of law for the civil lawsuit, which I imagine, how did that go down as far as...
And don't get me wrong, my son was 100% wrong. Yeah. The video was a no-go. That's not okay. And you're going to have to pay for what you do wrong, right? But he just had to learn the hard way because to him, all his friends were doing it. So he thought, why me? You know? And in that mentality, when they're teenagers, they're very invincible. And it can't happen to me. So here he was in this situation, and they got to a point of doing the civil lawsuit, and we ended up having to pay a huge amount, which was a very big burden to both his father and I in that sense,
Wow.
And there were costs also to counseling. He would go to counseling once a week. He also had to attend probation office with his officer once a week. And so, yeah, a lot of things happening.
I know, you're, I'm sure, giving nightmares to all our listeners. And at the same time, you go first as waking people up to like, we have to go first as parents to sound the alarm. You're, unfortunately, the poster child of the worst possible scenario that can happen to a parent, a family, their son who is on track. I talk about the critical 8, these 8 years from being 16 to 23 of like really how, what happens in our life and how do we get through those years. And he wasn't even that old.
No.
And to have something that's now impacted, I imagine that, getting on track, just to kind of close the loop. Your son's 21 now.
Yeah, he'll be 21 in
Did
October.
graduate high school, is in college?
He graduated with gold cords, actually. He ended up his senior year when I told you he got caught with Snapchat. The principal asked that we remove him from there, too. So we had 3 months prior to, he went in February to juvenile hall. And so when he got out, we had 2 months before graduation to get him caught back up. They wouldn't allow him to go to school. And so we were asked, since the time frame he had lost, to put him into independent studies. So we quickly enrolled him in independent studies, and super proud. He walked with gold cords in 4.2 GPA, and managed to go on and get on the baseball team for a junior college the next year. Lot of loss, but continued to just remind him, you have to learn from your mistakes, because a mistake made again is another mistake, right? If you keep doing it. So, and he's moving forward, and he's pretty excited to have this new section of his life, new chapter open up. But
go ahead.
No, it's just a hard topic. And, as a parent, it's a huge struggle, and our kids, I don't think they understand. And a lot of parents don't understand when you hand that to them for their birthday present or Christmas present, what all you're handing. Like you said, it's dynamite, it's an explosive, and it's our duty to check, because even though I was checking, he still got in trouble. Yeah. And, it was hidden, because there's all these apps and accounts, and that they can use and hide things from us.
Well, you really struck a chord there with, like, if they want to create, these scenarios, if they want to misuse their phone, there's all kinds of new apps that are constantly being created for them to be able to hide those things. So, I know that the next chapter for you, I know that, there's many movements, whether that's Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, that started here in California. Actually, a friend of mine's mother, after his brother was involved in some of those first drunk driving situations. And, there's here I am in Chico, California, which is every 15 minutes was started here as a result of a young lady who was killed by a drunk driver. Mm-hmm. And you're willing to step out there into the public eye and start, unfortunately scaring parents and scaring young people with the realities of what these devices can do and how 8 seconds can change the rest of your life.
Right.
And
because this will carry through. He will have this on his shoulders the rest of his life, even though he has big plans to move into a new chapter in his life. But it's going to follow him forever, right? It changed him. He didn't get to play baseball. He didn't get to graduate with his high school friends. He didn't get to experience homecoming and prom and all of that. So he missed out on a lot. And so my goal is, even if it just touches one parent or one kid and changes their life, and they think about it, just that extra thought process to make that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these are important, dinner conversations and conversations with kids about the realities that they're being bombarded to be cool. Mm-hmm. I talk about as an Instagram, whether it's Instagram, and I know maybe there's something new that they're onto. These kids are basically challenged to create a TV show and that has viewers. And how many viewers can I get on my TV show? And they put up their TV show for the day. And they look at night, how many likes did I get? And releases the endorphins. And they're like, everybody likes me. And I had a good TV show today. And then they start again the next day. And it's like this continual cycle of, how do I create interest in me to create a sense of I am popular and I am recognized. And here day after day, we know what sells on TV is, sex, drugs, and then rock and roll. And the edgier your program is, the more viewers you get. And they're continually trying to, match what they're seeing in these rap videos, or, what sells on TV, the Kardashians and this, and, Jersey Shores. And, did you see what happened on that? And, well, look what we did last night, and here it is on my phone, and I'll share it with you. We're going to definitely put links on the end of the podcast and recognize like places where parents can go to get information. Mm-hmm. What would you say is really your biggest message to, if I'm a parent out there, I've got a 10-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 15-year-old, what do they do? How can they learn from your experience to go first, to ask these tough questions of their young people, of their kids, to be sure that they don't fall through one of these trap doors that they probably know are there, but they don't know the seriousness of the situation?
Right. Most want just that connection, right? Because you want to be able to get a hold of your kid or give that available to them. But the real dynamic here is that we need to educate them with what they have. And they know right from wrong. And if you're teaching that and continually giving that education to them about what they have in their hands and the apps they're using. Also, it has to do, in our scenario, even though it was a video, even if it's pictures, a lot of kids are being pressured into sending pictures for relationship, and girls and boys. It's not just girls anymore. And they are getting stuck and feeling like they have to in order to be popular or not made fun of or bullied. So there's even a heavier amount that goes behind that keyboard in that phone that we need to just talk to our kids about, and at the slightest chance. And that's causing we're seeing a lot of depression from these things too, and anxiety for kids. And I think really just knowing your kids and paying attention to them. If they come home and you can tell they're in a depressed mood, well, what's going on, and it's most likely something to do with social media or something that's been said.
Yeah.
And because of this.
Well, I think my biggest hope for today is not only that, parents are woken up, but that they'll maybe listen to this podcast with their kids, and it be a starting point of a conversation. Like, did you realize, son, daughter, cousin, whatever, the seriousness of what you just shared with me? Because people are sharing these things with other people, and we're, of course, everybody's on high alert around school shootings and things like that. If you see something, say something. And how do we light that same sort of fire in kids? Like, whoa, if somebody sends you a request for, hey, send me some pictures, you're like, whoa, that's, you're asking for someone to distribute pornography.
Correct.
If you're capturing that video, you're creating pornography.
Yes.
And even if they're like, hey, take a picture of me, boom, they're not legally cleared to say, I wanted that picture to be taken, because they're a minor.
Right.
And
kind of like you and I spoke about a few months back, we were talking, a phone has laws now. They've actually changed it, and there's rules and laws to these phones. And there's a lot of, as you can tell from our story, what's happened. Kids can get in big trouble, and they don't realize that. It's just like driving a car. Like we were talking about, you don't just hand the keys and say, okay, you're on your own. Have fun.
Which one's the brake? I'll just get the gas once you're going. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So phones the same way. You can't just hand it to them and expect them to know how to, work it and not incorrectly.
Well, the hard part is like you have a driver's instructor, and we're creating these new technologies and apps faster than someone can train them to it. So I think, in the absence of a new law being passed, and I know they're passing laws all the time to try to regulate things like this, and more education about their phones and the current apps, I think that, it really lands on if the person realizes the risk. And I think with like drunk driving, we know, hey, if you drive and you're intoxicated, you could kill someone. You're going to jail for murder. If you there's a lot of, information out there about how dangerous it is to drive intoxicated. And I think if we look at the dangers of, using your phone and thinking this is just, I deleted it. It doesn't get deleted. It's out there on the server. A forensic investigator can go into your computer, into your phone, and find stuff that you have no idea is there, that was deleted forever ago on previous accounts. It is being stored out there. And if I send you something, you're sitting right here next to me, it's bouncing off multiple relay systems, and in every one of those relay systems, it's being not just transferred, but copied and saved.
It is.
At each of those points.
And I know as parents, it's hard to keep up with it, especially like you were saying, most parents now are working so many long hours and so forth, but it's really in our best interest. And there's apps out there to, work and help monitor some of that. And just really educating the kids, letting them know, the right from the wrong. And if you're feeling pressured, not to make that choice, because it can put you in a really bad scenario.
Yeah. Well, I want to encourage also, and when we put the video together, when Ross does the video part for this, to go to and show us, because I know that if you go to your child's iPhone, I know within the iPhone, because that's what I have and my kids have, if I go to screen time, I can see the amount of time they're spending in each of the apps. I can see how much time they spend on Instagram, how much time on Snapchat, and it's shocking to see a busy kid who's, busy in life and all that stuff. And then you get into these numbers, you're like, whoa, you're spending, 40 hours a week on these two social media. That's a full-time job. Like, these kids are spending massive amounts of time. And the more time you're in a risky situation, the more the odds are that you're going to find yourself in one of these terrible traps. And, I know that on behalf of Odyssey and You Go First, we will do anything we can to help get your message out there, to help educate parents through the information that we'll share at the end of the podcast. We encourage them to invite you to come and speak at their schools or at their parent meetings to help really be an example of really where they don't want to find themselves at some point, and they can ask you questions. We may have some Q&A possible through our platform once we launch this podcast. And we'll certainly get those questions to you and help answer questions for parents out there. Okay. But we, here in our sort of half-hour framework, we're really thankful that you are willing to come here and go first to tell us some of your story and, as much as we can in this time block, and really help wake parents up to this
Just to make
device.
A difference. I mean, that's the main thing, is so others don't have to go through what we did. And I don't want to see any kid have to go through what my son did, because it's changed his life forever. So, yeah.
I can imagine if you had heard yourself speak, that many years ago, maybe a week before this, you would have sat your son down and said, hey, I just want to talk to you about the phone that we gave you and some of the really dangerous things that can unlock. When I was a kid, you knew where the bad part of town was and you avoided it.
Correct.
And now the bad part of town is in their room, and it's coming through the Wi-Fi, and it's coming at them, and it's knocking. That door is always presented to them.
Yeah.
So, on behalf of all of us at You Go First, a kind of deep day here in looking at the struggle and the ongoing story that's still unfolding for your son. We certainly hope that he can find his way through this, and maybe someday he'll be on the podcast, or that he'll be willing to go out and tell the story of how his life was changed.
I agree. I would hope so.
So on behalf of everybody here at You Go First, Jodi, we want to thank you for coming in and telling our story, your story, and being willing to put yourself out there and help educate parents and the young people to the seriousness of these social media and all of those possible pitfalls. So
thank you for having me.
You're
Appreciate
very
it.
welcome. I want to thank Jodi Palmer again for being a guest on You Go First. You will find her page hosted in the very near future at Odyssey for Youth, ODYSSEY for Youth. And you can always ask questions of Jodi at yougofirst.live in the comments section, or if posted on the Odyssey team's Facebook, please leave comments below and we will get those to Jodi. Thanks, and make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to another episode of You Go First. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to listen to another episode, you can find us at yougofirst.live, or you can see more about our host, Lane Hensley, on his Instagram at OneDreamChaser. To learn more about his company, Odyssey Teams Inc., go to odysseyteams.com or follow all their social media channels at Odyssey Teams. Thanks again, and we hope that you will go first to share our podcast with a friend or colleague. Now, you go first.